It started simple. A neighborhood volleyball game. I didn't expect to meet anyone, let alone Eliza. She stood out, not because of some loud, attention-grabbing trait, but because of her grounded, effortless smile. We talked for a bit afterward. Nothing serious, just laughing at how terrible my serves were. We didn't rush into anything. I was fresh out of high school, scraping by with an entry-level warehouse supervisor job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. Eliza was an HR coordinator, and she had this way about her, like she believed in me even when I wasn't sure if I believed in myself. She saw potential, and I saw someone who didn't treat me like I was just another guy on the struggle bus. We bonded over the little things, the late-night talks about our future, our shared hope of building something from nothing. She encouraged me to keep pushing at work. And I did. The proposal came a year later. I didn't have much to offer, but I had that belief in myself, the belief she'd given me. When I asked her, she didn't hesitate. She said yes like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my life was really starting. But that's where the cracks began to form. I didn't see them right away, but I'd feel them later, just enough to make me question things. The weekend was supposed to be fun, a team-building thing for Eliza's work. She'd been raving about it for weeks, and when she asked me to tag along, I agreed. Thought it would be a good chance to get to know her coworkers. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, but as soon as I walked into the lodge, I felt like a stranger. Eliza was all smiles, introducing me to everyone. Her manager, Ms. Clay, was the first to corner me. She had this sharp, polished look, like she'd just walked out of a corporate ad. Denise, the team lead, stood nearby, sipping her drink and giving me this look like she was trying to figure me out. "So, Walter," Ms. Clay started, not unkindly, but with that edge that made me feel like I was being sized up, "you're still lifting boxes over at the warehouse?" She smiled, but her tone was all wrong, like it was something small town or beneath her. I gave a tight laugh, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, still lifting boxes. Pays the bills," I said, shrugging it off. But then, Denise chimed in, "You mean still lifting boxes?" Eliza laughed, but it wasn't her usual laugh. It was quick, nervous, like she wasn't sure whether to defend me or let it slide. That stung more than I cared to admit. Miss Clay didn't stop there. "You know, Eliza, you could do better. In every area. Career, finances, lifestyle." She trailed off, letting the words hang in the air like they were facts. I could feel my stomach tighten. I glanced at Eliza, expecting her to say something, anything, but she just nodded, her eyes on Miss Clay like she was hanging on every word. "Yeah, I know," Eliza said, her voice a little quieter than usual. That was when I started to feel it, the subtle shift. It wasn't loud, wasn't in your face, but I could tell. Eliza wasn't defending me, wasn't pushing back against the idea that I was some kind of failure. And that, it just didn't sit right. The rest of the weekend, I tried to ignore the way the conversations felt like I was being talked around. They'd bring up their fancy work trips, their high-level meetings. Eliza laughed along with them, her attention slipping further away from me, even as she stood right next to me. I thought it was nothing, just office talk. Eliza was used to it. Maybe she didn't even notice. But when we got home, I started hearing the change in her voice. She didn't just talk about her work anymore. She repeated it, the jargon, the buzzwords. "We need to be more results-driven, Walter." Or, "That's not an efficient way to think about things." At first, I figured it was just the aftereffect of the weekend, you know? She'd been immersed in that world. But then it didn't stop. Every conversation we had turned into some corporate evaluation. It was like I was no longer talking to my fiancé. I was talking to a project manager, giving feedback on my performance. I started to feel like I was under a microscope, and the worst part? She didn't even realize it. It was like she didn't see me as me anymore, just something to be optimized. And that, more than anything, made me feel like I was disappearing. Things didn't change overnight. First, it was small stuff. The way Eliza would look at me when I made a decision, like she was unsure whether I'd gotten it right. We argued over groceries once, of all things. I bought the wrong brand of cereal, and she snapped, "That's not efficient, Walter. We need to stick to the list." I tried to let it go, but it was becoming a pattern. Every little thing I did seemed to get second-guessed. Rent allocation, the way I handled our utilities, even the way I folded the laundry. "You need to be more results-driven," she'd say, her voice just matter-of-fact enough that it didn't feel like a suggestion. Felt like a directive. I wasn't just living with her anymore. I was getting managed. I could tell something was off when she started mentioning her work group's advice more and more. "Denise thinks we should change our budget this month," she'd say, sitting down at the table with a spreadsheet. "She says you should cut back on dining out, but we're already behind on savings." It stung. And not just because she was telling me how to manage our money, but because I wasn't even asked how I felt about it. I was expected to just agree, like I was some passive participant in the decisions that affected both of us. It wasn't just the budget. She began changing things around the house without asking. "Let's restructure our schedule," she'd say, glancing at her phone for inspiration. "We're wasting too much time on evenings off. Denise says it's more productive if we schedule our downtime around work priorities." I started feeling like a project, like I was being coached through life, step by step. It wasn't just about the money or the chores or the routines. It was the way she turned everything into a series of problems to be solved, and I was the one failing the evaluation. I tried to bring it up gently one night. We were sitting on the couch, Eliza flipping through a magazine, her phone buzzing in her lap. I hesitated, not sure how to put it without sounding insecure, but I had to say something. "Eliza," I started, my voice low, "it's been bothering me lately. All the advice from work. You're always telling me what the team thinks we should do. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's us anymore. Like we're not a team." She looked up, surprised, maybe even a little annoyed. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but not in a way that invited a real conversation. More like she didn't want to hear it. "I just mean," I continued, trying to keep calm, "it feels like everything we do is based on what they think is best. You and Denise and Miss Clay. It's like we don't make decisions for ourselves anymore. You're always second-guessing me." She shrugged, her eyes drifting back to her phone. "It's just conversations with friends, Walter. They're just offering advice. You should be grateful I'm listening to them." That was when it hit me. She didn't even see it. She didn't get how much space that was putting between us. And maybe she never would. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like I was losing her. Not just in the way she treated me, but in how she started acting. She was becoming more like a performance coach than a partner. Like I wasn't her fiancé. I was just some underperforming employee she had to manage. I tried to push through it, tell myself that it was just a phase. Maybe it was the stress of her job, or maybe I was overreacting. But the distance between us grew, and no matter how hard I tried to reach her, I couldn't bridge the gap, and I wasn't sure I could take much more of it. I didn't expect to feel good about landing that logistics manager position. I mean, I knew it was a step up, but part of me kept expecting something to go wrong. But it didn't. The pay was better. The benefits were solid. I could actually see myself getting ahead. I used the extra money wisely. I paid down our debt, something that had always hung over my head. We upgraded our apartment, nothing crazy, but it was ours. Better space, less clutter, a fresh start. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was building something. Like my hard work was paying off and maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting ahead. I couldn't wait to tell Eliza. But when I did, when I came home that night and tried to share the news, her reaction was off. "Did you check the rent payment for this month?" she asked, flipping through some bills she'd stacked neatly on the kitchen counter. Her tone was too casual, like she was already deep in thought, not even noticing the weight of the news I was offering. I blinked. Yeah, I've got it covered." I waited, expecting a smile, maybe a "wow, babe, that's amazing," or at least some kind of excitement, but instead, she kept flipping through the papers. "Right, well," she said, "just make sure you're not overspending again. We're trying to save more this year. You could have gone with a cheaper place. Maybe we should revisit the budget." I froze. I had just paid off most of the credit card debt. I had just made a move to set us up better, and all she had to say was that? Cheaper. I repeated a little too sharply. Eliza, I upgraded our place, I paid down the debt. I thought that's what we agreed on, to start getting ahead. She sighed, tapping the calculator on her phone. It's just that you don't really track your spending, Walter. I've been looking at it and we could be saving more. We could be using the money better. I felt like I'd just been slapped. I am using it better. This is progress, Eliza. You can't just nitpick every decision I make. She didn't seem to hear me. Instead, she went back to her screen and said, I've made a spreadsheet of all our expenses. Denise gave me a few pointers. She said we need to manage time more efficiently, too. Denise again. Of course, I could feel the resentment building up, thick and slow. I stared at her. The woman I'd just told about my promotion, the one I was hoping would share in the pride of this win, was tracking our finances in a spreadsheet with advice from Denise? From Denise? It hit me then I wasn't being consulted anymore. I wasn't even part of the conversation. Decisions were just made, and I was expected to follow. Wait, hold on, I said, my voice tight. You're doing this? Without even asking me? Eliza blinked at me, surprised by my tone. It's just how things are done now, Walter. I'm just trying to keep us on track. It's what they would do at work. They'd make sure we're more organized. Yeah, I said, my heart sinking. But I'm not them. I'm your partner. Remember? Not a report you hand off for approval. Her eyes narrowed like I was being difficult. Don't make it more than it is, Walter. We need to be more strategic. You've got to get better at managing your time. We both do. Strategic, I repeated, shaking my head. I'm not a project. I'm not some employee you're evaluating. This is our life, Eliza. Our life. Not a quarterly review. But she just shrugged, a little dismissively, and turned back to the spreadsheet. You'll get the hang of it. Just let me handle this part. And that's when I knew. I wasn't a part of it anymore. Not really. This wasn't about being a team, it wasn't about building something together. It was about her running the show. I had been so focused on proving myself to her, to everyone, that I didn't see the walls getting higher and higher. But now I could see them. She wasn't interested in my input anymore. She was too busy listening to everyone else. And I was just there, invisible. It was the cleaning supplies. I'd forgotten to pick them up. It wasn't a big deal, or at least it shouldn't have been. It wasn't like we were out of everything, but we were low on dish soap, and Eliza had mentioned it a couple of times. I didn't think much of it. But when I came home that night, and Eliza saw the empty spot where the dish soap should have been, the irritation was immediate. Seriously, Walter? She said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. She was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a disappointment. How do you forget something so simple? I'm sorry, okay? I said, trying to keep it calm. I had a long day. I'll go out tomorrow. She didn't seem satisfied with that. You can't keep forgetting the basics. You're not reliable. My chest tightened. I didn't forget on purpose, Eliza. It's just. No, she cut me off, raising her hand. It's not just that, Walter. It's a pattern. You forget things. You can't manage the small stuff, and that's why I'm the one always handling everything. I blinked, thrown off by the sudden shift. What do you mean, handling everything? I've been working, Her voice dropped to that clinical, no-nonsense tone she used when she was talking about efficiency or results. Denise said you lack accountability. And honestly, she's right. My stomach dropped. Denise? She was bringing her up again? I could feel the heat rising in my face. I was stunned. Wait, what? You're outsourcing our marriage to your coworkers now. Eliza's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. I'm not outsourcing anything. I'm just listening to people who know how to get things done. They're offering me advice, Walter. They've supported me more than you ever have. Emotionally, professionally, I'm not the one who's been dragging my feet. My head spun. My breath caught in my throat. Are you seriously saying that to me right now? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're talking about Denise. Denise. Like she's the one who's been there for you? I'm your husband, Eliza. I'm the one you're supposed to lean on. Not her, not Miss Clay, not any of them. She didn't respond right away. Her gaze flickered toward the counter, like she was mentally calculating what to say next. When she spoke, it wasn't with warmth. I don't need to lean on you when you can't even follow through on the simplest things. That was it. I felt like the ground had just opened beneath me. I wasn't sure if I was angry or hurt or both. But what I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to take it anymore. I'm not competing with your job circle, I said, my voice rougher than I wanted. I'm your husband, not your intern. I'm not here to be managed or to be evaluated like a damn employee. You're supposed to be my partner, Eliza, not my boss. Her jaw tightened. She didn't even flinch. I don't need this right now, Walter. I don't need you questioning me every time I try to make things better. I could feel the space between us growing, thick and suffocating. It wasn't about cleaning supplies anymore. It wasn't about anything that had started this argument. It was about how I was being treated, how my place in this relationship had been whittled down to nothing. You need to figure out what you want, Eliza, I said, my voice quieter now, almost defeated, because I'm done being someone else's project. She stared at me, her eyes cold, and then without a word, she grabbed her coat and stormed out of the apartment. The door slammed behind her so hard I thought the walls might shake. I stood there for a long time after that, trying to process what had just happened. I wasn't sure if I'd said too much or not enough, but I knew one thing for sure. She wasn't coming back that night. 2 days passed. No text, no call. She didn't respond when I tried to reach out. I tried to tell myself it was just a fight, that she just needed space. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a fight. This was something else, something bigger. I didn't know where she went, but I didn't need to. She wasn't in our home, and she wasn't with me. I could feel it in my bones. The distance had already widened, and now it felt like we were living separate lives in the same place. When Eliza finally came back, it was like nothing had changed, but everything had. She was colder now, more distant. Her eyes didn't meet mine like they used to, and her voice had that corporate tone. Sharp, calculated, like she was presenting an evaluation rather than talking to her partner. It wasn't us anymore. It was her and then me, a box to check on her agenda. We need to talk, she said as soon as she stepped in. She didn't even look like she'd been gone for 2 days. Her coat came off, and she stood there, arms crossed, like she was ready to hold court. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask where she'd been, if she'd thought about anything, but I already knew the answer wasn't going to come from a real place. It was just going to be more of the same business speak, the same detached tone. I've been thinking, she started, glancing around, making sure her words were landing the way she wanted them to. You need to start contributing more, Walter, emotionally and materially. You can't just keep showing up, doing the bare minimum. We've been talking about this for a while. I wanted to laugh, but it wasn't funny. Emotionally and materially? What does that even mean? She leaned in, her voice steady. It means you need to pull your weight. Start making more of an effort. I need someone who is valuable in this partnership. Someone who can keep up with what's expected. I could feel the anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. I'm trying, Eliza. I'm really trying. But every time I make progress, it's not enough. So, tell me, are we still a team? Or am I just an obstacle to your solo progress plan? Her eyes narrowed. Her lips pressed together like she was trying to contain something. That's not fair, Walter. It's the truth. I'm not your employee. I'm not some project you evaluate. The words were out before I could stop them, and I knew they hit harder than I intended. But I wasn't about to back down now. She exhaled sharply, like she was done. I'm giving you an ultimatum then. Her eyes locked onto mine, cold and unwavering. Apologize for disrespecting my mentors, or move out. I stared at her, stunned. You're serious? Yes, she said. No hesitation, no softness in her voice. You need to apologize. You've been out of line, disrespecting the people who've been supporting me. They've helped me more than you ever have. It was like a slap to the face, and the worst part was, She didn't even see it. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. I'm not gonna bend just to make you feel better about them. I'm tired of being treated like I'm beneath you, like I'm just another thing on your to-do list. She didn't say anything at first. Her lips pressed tighter together, like she was weighing her options. Then, almost casually, she said, "Fine. If that's how you feel, I'll handle the bills from now on. You're no longer part of the auto payment system. I'll manage things independently. It's easier that way." I froze. Independently. The word echoed in my head. I didn't even know how to respond. What was left to say? It wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that she had just cut me out of everything. "You can't just take me out of this like it's a business transaction," I said, the words coming out with more frustration than I expected. "You can't treat me like I'm some stranger in this relationship." "I'm not treating you like a stranger," she shot back, her tone flat. "I'm just being practical. If you're not going to step up, I need to protect myself. It's not personal. It's just the way it has to be." Her words stung, like she'd just wiped out whatever had been left of the us in this whole thing. I looked at her, standing there with that cold, detached look on her face, and I felt like I was standing in front of a stranger. She wasn't the woman I'd fallen in love with. She wasn't the woman who used to look at me like I mattered. "I'm not your business project, Eliza," I said, my voice breaking, but I couldn't keep it in anymore. "I'm your husband, but you don't act like it. You act like I'm an issue to solve, not a person." She didn't respond. She didn't even flinch. She just stood there, her posture rigid, like we weren't even talking about a marriage anymore. I knew right then we were done. Maybe not officially, but in every way that mattered, we were finished. I woke up that morning to the silence of an empty apartment, except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Eliza was already gone. No good morning, no kiss, no acknowledgement. She'd been gone more often than not recently, leaving me alone in the space we once shared. It wasn't just the distance between us that hurt. It was the way she'd made it so clear she didn't need me. The first sign that things had really shifted was when I noticed I couldn't access the joint calendar anymore. I opened my phone, expecting to see the events we'd scheduled together. The doctor's appointments, the plans for the weekend, but nothing was there. It was all gone. I tried logging into the shared files next, the ones we'd both had access to for months, but I was locked out. Felt like a quiet slap in the face. Then came the company picnic. I'd helped her organize it. I was supposed to be her plus one, but when I showed up at the venue, I was met with confused stares. "Where's Eliza?" I asked a few of her coworkers. "She's here with some of the team," one of them replied, clearly uncomfortable. "Didn't know you weren't invited." I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Eliza hadn't told me she was going alone, hadn't even mentioned it. I was left standing there, like I was some stranger, someone who didn't belong in her life anymore. At home, it was the same. Eliza barely spoke to me unless it was something transactional. "Did you pay the rent?" she'd ask, or "Did you sign off on the new utilities budget?" There was no connection, no effort to even pretend like we were partners anymore. One night, as I was sitting at the table, scrolling through my phone, she dropped a bombshell, like it was just another fact to report. "Denise thinks you're holding me back." I stopped in my tracks, my heart sinking. "What do you mean? Holding you back from what?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "She thinks your lack of accountability is affecting my career. She says you're a liability." It hit me like a punch to the stomach. But I wasn't surprised. Denise had been making an appearance in every conversation for months now, as though she was some sort of guru on how Eliza should run her life. But I didn't expect her to be the reason Eliza had decided I was the problem. "Denise," I repeated, the words barely leaving my mouth. "What do you think, Eliza? What do you think?" She paused for a beat, still tapping away at her phone, not even giving me the decency of an answer. "I think you're just too focused on what everyone else wants," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think you're parroting everyone else's opinions so much, you've forgotten what you actually believe. You don't even know anymore." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. I could see it in her eyes, the way she'd shut down, The way she couldn't even process the truth if it slapped her in the face. She was too far gone. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I knew we were done, and I knew it wasn't going to change. There was nothing left here but resentment and disappointment. So, while she slept on the couch, curled up with her phone like it was the only thing keeping her company, I started packing a suitcase. It wasn't dramatic. There were no long speeches, no big confrontations. I just packed my things. Slowly, methodically. The clothes I'd been wearing, the few personal items I kept around. I folded everything neatly, like I was just heading out for a few days. But I wasn't coming back. I glanced at her one last time. The woman I once loved. The woman who had once been my partner. Now she just seemed like a stranger. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't choosing to leave. I was walking away from a relationship that had already left me behind. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Eliza was still asleep on the couch, her phone clutched in her hand like it was a lifeline. I stood there for a moment watching her. Something in me wanted to say goodbye, but there was nothing left to say. I finished packing my suitcase, my hands moving methodically, like I was just getting ready for a business trip. But this wasn't a trip. This was me leaving. I didn't need a speech, didn't need to make a scene. All I needed was to get out. I grabbed my phone and logged into the shared bank account. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to feel guilty about taking the money, but I didn't. It wasn't like we were sharing anything anymore. I transferred my earnings out, everything I'd worked for, everything that had been mine for the last few months. Then I booked a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. No return, no questions, just one way. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I checked into a small, modest rental by the beach. It was nothing fancy, just a tiny place with a hammock on the porch and the sound of waves crashing in the distance. The kind of place I could disappear into for a while. I turned off my notifications. All of them. No more emails, no more texts, no more constant pressure. I didn't want to hear from anyone, especially not from Eliza. She wasn't my concern anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have a meeting to rush to, no metrics to hit, no deadlines hanging over my head. The first day felt strange, like a weight had been lifted off me, but it also felt like a long exhale. I spent the day doing nothing. No phone calls, no check-ins. I walked on the beach, sat in the sun, watched the waves. It was quiet, and for the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was just peaceful. In 24 hours, I felt more at ease than I had in the last 3 years. I didn't need to be anyone's project. I didn't need to be evaluated or fixed. I was just me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. A few days passed in this strange, quiet bubble I'd created for myself. The first night was the hardest, when the silence felt too thick, but by day 3, it was a relief. I woke up early, stretched out on the hammock, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, and I realized I didn't miss the noise, the constant pressure, the feeling that I was always under a microscope. But then my phone buzzed. At first, it was just a couple of missed calls. I didn't recognize the number, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. I didn't pick up. I knew what it would be, but then it kept coming, buzzing, text after text. Eliza. The first one was calm enough, just a question, "Where are you?" Then came the next, "We need to talk." Then it turned, fast. "How could you just leave? I can't believe you're doing this to me." And then it spiraled. "You abandoned me. I've stuck with you when you were nobody. And now you just leave me like this." I put the phone down. There was no point in reading more. She didn't want an explanation. She wanted control. She wanted me to be the one who needed her, who couldn't leave, who would come back. But I wasn't coming back. Not like that. It didn't stop. Text after text, all from her. Some full of rage, others full of panic. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. She was losing it, but I'd been losing myself for months. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into that. Then came the voice note. I didn't listen to it right away. I needed a minute. But when I did, I regretted it. She was crying, her voice cracking. I didn't think you'd really leave. I didn't expect this. I'm so overwhelmed, Walter. I didn't think it would end this way. I could hear her sniffling, hear the rawness in her voice. But I couldn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything anymore. I put the phone down again, letting the voice note play out as background noise. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying because her plan had fallen apart. She'd never seen me as someone she loved. She saw me as someone she could fix, mold, use to get ahead. And when I didn't fit into that anymore, when I stopped playing the part, she broke. Then, a new message popped up. It was from Denise. You need to talk to Eliza. She's a mess. This isn't the way to handle things. I didn't even open it. I just blocked her. I didn't owe her any more of my time, my attention, my energy. I didn't care what she had to say. I scrolled through the rest of Eliza's texts. I never wanted this. I just wanted to help us both. You gave up on us. I deleted them all, one by one. I wasn't interested in her version of what had happened. I wasn't interested in her guilt trips. The truth was simple. She wasn't sorry. She was just uncomfortable without me in the picture. It was never about love. It was about control. I put my phone down for good, and for the first time in days, I felt the smallest flicker of peace. The kind of peace you only get when you finally stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. I didn't need to explain myself to her, or to anyone. I had made my choice. I was done. Weeks passed since I left, and each one felt like a breath of fresh air. I'd settled into this new life in Costa Rica, a life I never thought I'd have. I'd learned enough Spanish to get by, picked up a few local phrases that made me feel more grounded. I worked remotely doing freelance logistics gigs, something that gave me the flexibility to keep my days my own. I didn't miss Eliza, not once, not even for a second. I'd imagined it would be hard, that there'd be a part of me that would long for her, but I didn't. The hardest part of being with her had always been feeling like I was living under a microscope. Every decision I made, every word I said, it was all analyzed, evaluated, scrutinized. I was constantly being managed by someone who was supposed to be my partner. I didn't realize how much of a relief it would be to just breathe without someone waiting for me to fail. I realized something, too. I had spent so much time trying to prove my worth to people who never cared, trying to show her that I could be the man she wanted, the man who could live up to whatever standards she had set in her head. I'd sacrificed parts of myself to try and fit into a mold that wasn't even real. I stayed in that relationship far longer than I should have, thinking that if I just tried harder, worked harder, it would click. But the truth was, it was never about me. It was about her. And the hardest part wasn't leaving Eliza. It was admitting she'd already left me years ago. She was never really there. She'd been pulling away, emotionally checked out, and I'd been too blind to see it. I used to think that love was something you fought for. But now I understood, it's also something you can't chase down. If someone doesn't value you, doesn't respect you, there's nothing left to fight for. So yeah, I left. And now, as I sat here on my porch overlooking the ocean, I couldn't help but think about how long I had ignored the slow erosion of respect in that relationship. I'd put up with her and her team, let her turn our home into a workplace, all because I thought I had to prove myself. But here's the thing, if your partner brings the world into your home but never defends you inside it, that's not love. That's surrender. I'd learned the hard way that when respect goes, so does everything else. And once I stopped fighting to prove myself to someone who never saw me, I realized I was already free.